So Carole, I am so pleased to have you on this podcast today. Carole Glover, you are a self-proclaimed Maverick maker. How did you get that title? I'd love for you to tell my audience the story about this.
Okay, Krista, thank you very much. Well, I'm quite old here, so we could be here for 9 hours. I'll be very quick. As a kid growing up, I grew up in a small island called the Isle of Man, working class family. My mum was a hairdresser, my dad a plumber, 4 younger sisters, worked hard at school, but I was pretty shit at school, scraped what we call in Britain 2 A-levels. And through a telephone call from my deputy head teacher, I got into what was called a polytechnic, which wasn't a university, it was 1 level below, but it was very, it wasn't academic, it was very business orientated. Did a business degree and found all of a sudden that I could do business. And there's a couple of reasons for that, because I was from a not very well off family. So from the age of 13, I worked. And when I was 16, I would typically have 3 jobs a day in the summer. And I often see American teen movies where people do this. And I never ever realized till this very minute that I lived it when I was a teen as well. So anyway, when I went into the world of business, of course, I had lots of experience. So I went into retail, very lucky to go into retail, but that's because I worked in a factory for one of my years at college as part of my studies. And got involved with retail, and I had the most amazing career in world retail. But I went off to work for a company, and then I got headhunted to a company called Halfords, which is a bit like Pep Boys in the US. It's an automotive aftermarket company. Quite an unusual company for a female. And let me just stop myself here and say that when I was a student, I was so lucky that punk rock was out, and I was the ultimate punk. It's the best time of my whole life. And the energy that burns my spirit is punk rock music. And I know you're in San Francisco, and my great influences of the last 20 years have been Green Day, and I've walked miles. I even emulate Billy Joe Armstrong's hairdo on my day, because he is my muse. But anyway, and if there's ever a maverick in music, it's Billy Joe Armstrong and the whole of Green Day. But here I am anyway. So I went off to work for Halfords, which was it's a very male-targeted business. When I got there, I wondered where all the other women were who worked in management and leadership in it. There were none. And I remember on the day I turned up, I had blue pixie boots, blue striped leggings, a red dress with white polka dots all over it, and my hair was orange and spiky. And everyone else had a male suit. And but anyway, they took me in as if I was like the tropical parrot in the office or something. So they were lovely to me, and they treated me as if I was like the little female. I don't know. They didn't treat me as a little female anything. They treated me as Carole. Oh, look, it's Carole. And so I've always thought of myself as Carole. Through going there and being very good at what I did, because I know that you, Krista, use sassy, and seriously is one of the words, yes. And frankly, I'm very good at what I do. And sometimes we women and men are not very good at saying that. But I am very good at what I do and have been. So I went through the ranks of that company. And then I got to the man who was head of buying for the company, and that's the blue ribbon job in retailing. And bearing in mind this was automotive retailing, the CEO asked me if I would apply for the job. And I said, this is very Carole to the CEO, don't be ridiculous. I'm not creative. I'm not adaptable. I like what I'm doing. And he said, no, I want you to apply. So we had a bit of a wrangle, which only Carole and the CEO would do. And he sent me for some psychometric testing. And the first line said, Carole is very creative, adaptable, etc. Got the job. And after 3, and by the way, there were 34 men who'd applied for the job. And it's not about it being men. It's just there were 34 people who weren't me who applied for the job. But then when I got the job, about 28 of them worked for me and wanted to kill me. So that was actually a very important part of my growing up at age 28. But after about 3 months, the chief exec came to see me. And he said, how are you doing, Carole? And I said, surprisingly well. We're on here, we're going ahead. I've got everything organised. general conversation. And as he was going out of my office, he said to me, Carole, I always knew you could do it. And then over his shoulder, he said, I've always loved Mavericks. And I sat thinking, why has he used the word Maverick? And then that was my career. I mean, within 4 years, I ran their automotive business in the UK, which was a £400 million business. And I was like, I think 33 when that happened. And so anyway, my life changed quite dramatically then. And I know, Krista, I didn't talk about this, but my mum died very suddenly. And she was from the island that I live in, the Isle of Man now. And I came home. I gave up my career. And I'm a coach now, as you know, and I feel perhaps had I had a coach at that time, I may have made a different decision, I might not. But anyway, I did it. And I have to tell you, as a good maverick, I've never regretted a decision I've made. And I didn't regret that one. But it was one of those maverick decisions that I make, which is, that's it, that's the decision, and I'm getting on with it, and I'm going to make the best of it. So I came home. Got a job as a director of a chain here, and I've done a lot of different jobs while I've been here as a director. Most interestingly, as chief executive of the Isle of Man TT Races, the most challenging motorcycle road race in the world, and the fastest road race in the world. And people come from all over the world to see it. And I was in charge for the centenary, and a bit like Halfords, Halfords, I've no idea how a car works, and I still haven't. Motorbikes, I've never been on one, and I won't be going on one, but I know everyone who's everyone in the world of motorcycling, because I've met most of them, and I've run the event, and that was great. And then latterly, I've been a property director for a big, a 1 million square foot of property in where I live, and I've also been, out of accident, the chief technical officer for retail and a retail IT business, which was pretty huge. And again, because of leadership, I'm not an expert leader, I'm a generalist leader. And I was really pleased earlier this year to read a piece by Adam Grant in the US that said, the reason generalist leaders succeed. And I looked at it and thought, yep, that's definitely me. So I'm a maverick. And then 3.5 years ago, I had this sort of cathartic moment. I was approaching a very big birthday with 0 in it. And I thought, you know what, Carole, you're a bit too comfortable. You need to do something that floats your boat. So I decided to do something I loved, which is developing younger people. And just a little thing that is interesting in my career, I mentioned being head of buying for Halfords. My first management trainee that ever worked for me is now the president of Limited Brands of America. So the company that owns Victoria's Secret and many other brands, he was my first trainee. Wow. And he contacted me a few years ago on LinkedIn and sent me, Martin Waters he's called, he sent me a message to say what a great time he'd had working with me. So that was lovely because it was a long time ago. But I retrained as a coach, and I have pushed myself into that. Not pushed myself, I've gone into it with great gusto, as I do everything. And I absolutely adore it. So much so that in the last 6 weeks, I went part-time in my job, which is very, highly rewarded and whatever, because I'm a director of 5 companies within it, and I run various departments. I've gone part-time, and then in 4 weeks' time, I'm leaving completely to pursue this boat floating, being a coach, but also being a maverick maker. Because I don't think there's ever been a better time to think like a maverick with all the change in the world. I get out of bed in the morning for everything that's going to go wrong in the day, not for everything that's going to go. Why would anyone get out of bed for everything that's going to go right? I go, ooh, bring it on. What's going to go wrong? What can I change? What can we do differently? So that's me. And and I'm sort of more, my superpowers, my number one superpower is enthusiasm. Another one is emotional intelligence. And then the one that is mega, and I think this is not against men at all, but intuition is such an amazing strength. The more experience we have, the more intuition, or the more confident we get in our intuition. That is my mega superpower. But to a lot of people with fixed mindsets, it looks like smoke and mirrors. but actually I'm massively effective. And we mentioned Vishen Lakhiani before. He's on a mission on intuition. And I heard him speak about that in September last year. And I was just sitting nodding, going, if only more people would trust their intuition.
Wow, that is so powerful how you came into an industry that was a male-dominated industry, the automobile industry, and you didn't even know much about it. And you rose to leadership as an outsider, being a female and also being a punk rock style versus a corporate male. And you were able to lead other men and women and thrive. And then with the motorbikes, the same thing. So clearly, I was going to ask you, what is your secret to leadership? But when you said emotional intelligence, and then you said my favorite word, which is intuition. As a coach now, you and I share that, because for me, self-awareness is so underrated. People just don't realize what they're doing to themselves. The voices that they're saying, the things they're saying to themselves, I can't do that, or don't be ridiculous, or you'll make a fool out of yourself. We all have what I call the assy channel and the sassy channel. So I teach you how to turn down the volume and turn up that sassy, self-confident volume, which may make sense why you like punk rock so much, because music has always affected me. And I try dearly to listen to music that gives me self-confidence and sass and energy. And so it's interesting about your unconventional career. Intuition, though, is something that I would really love to talk about, because I don't hear people talking about that enough. In fact, mindset has opened many people's eyes that previously didn't understand that there was a word for what their intentions are. But being a leader, I also experienced, similar to you as a leader, having this extra level of insight into what was happening in the dynamics of relationships.
Totally.
And using that as a strategic advantage to lead better my team, to lead into closing bigger deals with the clients, and also to understand customers. So my intuition was telling me things that I hadn't learned in books, that I hadn't learned in my business courses. The men were oblivious. They were like, don't be ridiculous. There's no factual base. What's your factual base for this? And I would say, I feel this. So it's interesting that not many people talk about intuition, nor do they trust. How do you cultivate that? Is it just, sounds like for you, it might have been natural born talent, like a superpower. But for other people who you coach now, do you have any advice in general, how can we harness our intuition, trust it, and use it to guide us to make better decisions?
Well, I think, something very interesting. My husband started out as a mindfulness guide, and he now teaches connecting with your positive energy. And he's done a lot of reading in this area. And my sister Jane is a professor of neuroscience, so it helps to have the family to call upon. But one of the big things we now know is that we have as many cells in our digestive system that influence how we think and how our emotions react, as we almost thought we had in the brain. And that expression, gut reaction, that is based on actual physiological behavior, not, I'm having a gut reaction. There is something inside you that tells you. And the other thing with me about intuition is it's not a voice. Do I have voices? Not many. I've studied Buddhism a lot. I'm not a Buddhist, but I've studied Buddhist teachings for the last 10 years. So I work hard on choosing how my mind works. But I have this thing that I say gnaws away at me. There's a little thing sometimes, and it's because it wants me to pay attention to something that I'm not paying attention to. And that is like my intuitionometer. It's because, Carole, there's a thing you probably need to look at the moment. And I think, really? And I look at it and I do something. And then all of a sudden it grows into something so much bigger. And I think, brilliant. I think the first thing is that we all have it within us. When I say to clients, and one of the interesting things, I've done some really interesting coaching this year, and therefore it's a good example. I've coached some senior accountants, I've coached lawyers, partners in law firms in the last couple of years. But back in April, I think it was April, I coached a group of senior accountants in emotional intelligence. And I did it because they asked me, and I also did it because I wanted to see how I could influence these skills, or how I could influence them into these skills and emotional intelligence. And when you speak about intuition and emotional intelligence to them, they say, well, it's common sense, isn't it? And I said, well, yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. And are you doing it? And they're like, no. And I said, well, do you know what? You're all extremely clever. You would have all wiped the floor with me at school. You all went to university. I scraped. I went to a poly. I've got intuition and emotional intelligence in buckets. And one person in this room has run a £400 million business. And I didn't mean that from a position of ego and arrogance. It was an illustration of how powerful those two things are. What we have to have, though, around us is people who appreciate what a gift this is. You know, if you work in an environment that's very fixed mindset and judgmental, it doesn't matter how gifted you are at intuition and emotional intelligence. And I was a CEO in the public sector for nearly 5 years, and that is the hardest thing I have ever done. So I'm speaking from real experience there, because people thought, and they use bad phrases like, this is a knee-jerk, this is smoke and mirrors. No, it isn't. This is all of my massive experience and all the failures that I've had and all the practice I've had, making me the person who instinctively knows what you need to know to succeed and to do something. So what I actually tell my clients, which is the question you asked, what seems like a long time ago to you, is you have to listen to yourself. You have to stop. You have to step back. You have to just relax and feel what it is and try and help them to understand. And I now have clients who, I have one senior, a person who owns their own accountancy business. And she has this thing where she goes in the garden now when she gets a problem or something difficult or something that's starting to get her. And she goes in the garden, she takes deep breaths and she says, what would Carole do? And then she really concentrates and she knows the answer. And she says to me, how does it work? How does it work? And I said, I don't care, just keep doing it.
Well, I mean, we've all heard the expression, trust your intuition, but it's actually contradictory to how we're brought up, especially if you've had any business courses and you've been in management in business. And what you said is so key, because I also rose to management position in corporate world, and I was miserable because I understood that I could see things that weren't factual, that weren't fact-based, but that I knew were going to happen, or I knew that this is a better way of doing them. And because business is very cut and dry, it's show me the numbers, show me the statistics, I was ignored and told, you know, we don't need your input here, or, you know, we're not paying you for your opinions. Those are just opinions. If you have a data case, a study, a proven study, come back. But until then, we're focusing on facts. And, you know, business is all about facts. And I said, oh, really? So in life, when you know that your employees are thriving, that's an invisible thing. There's no facts. Why are you paying them? Let's take two managers, and you have identical backgrounds. I mean, let's say you had both the qualifications, but yet one team's thriving and the other one is barely surviving. You've got high turnover, very low productivity, absolutely no morale. Why is that, right? Because one leader is using emotional intelligence. And emotional intelligence is founded a lot in your intuition, correct? Listening to your intuition to guide you about how to nurture people and motivate people. And it goes way beyond facts.
I
So
think the thing, Krista, though, as well, is about the knowledge thing, because I've talked about the fact that I haven't had expert knowledge in almost any area where I've been a senior leader. So I've always had to trust my people. So if I start from a position that they have the knowledge that I don't, I then go from the position of how can I get the best, how can I create the best environment for each and every one of them? Not all of them together, because they're all different. What is it each needs from the leader to make them the best version of themselves to do their job as an expert? And I like to do that. So I don't micromanage. I can't micromanage. I have no idea what they're doing most of the time. So I have to trust. But to trust them, I have to create them the happiest place they can have at work each day. And then it's the big win. And I don't have to do figures for them. They do the figures themselves. They get the results and they do it. And, it all sounds, again, I feel like I'm talking as if this is esoteric and out there somewhere, but it flipping works. Trusting your people, empowering your people, giving them whatever each one of them needs. I have been running IT for a company for quite a while now, and I've been running teams of developers, and they are some of the most unusual people to lead that I've ever come across. So I've had to find a really new way of leading to lead them, but it's been good for me to do that.
I love what you're saying, Carole, and I so wish that I would have had a manager like you. Had I had someone like you above me, I may have thrived in corporate, but my destiny was to move to entrepreneurship because I just couldn't handle the glass ceiling. I didn't want to have to hold back from who I really am and who I'm meant to be. And what you just said is it's gold, because allowing people, fostering an environment where people can really thrive involves trust in their competencies. And constantly, I coach small business owners, and they complain about, well, I have to do it all myself because I can't find good help nowadays. And then they'll blame it on age. Oh, the millennials are finicky and they're hard to manage, or they'll blame it on the pay. I'm losing people because all they care about is money. There's no more loyalty in the world. And I always say to them, absolutely false, 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 because what you have just said summarizes what I've been trying to tell them, is that it's all about the trust. And I even read about a study where they had a child who was a troubled child who had switched schools 6 times. And finally, one teacher just treated him as a good boy. And he said, and this child later grew up to become a successful man. And I can't even recall who he was, but he was giving an interview about how he went from a troubled single family home to becoming a successful businessman. And he was saying about how finally this one teacher just welcomed him with a big warm smile every day into the classroom. And he said, he was the first teacher I'd ever had who didn't treat me like a bad child. And because of that, I became good. Like I just became good. And then from then on, I was a good person. And he even took me aside and said, don't ever let anyone make you feel little again. And he said that teacher changed my life. And it was such a small gesture, just to look at someone with respect. And I think that leadership is also hard because managers are afraid that they have to maintain a superiority over their subordinates, as well as a emotional distance. So I hear that constantly. You can't be friends with your employees. You can't eat with your employees. You have to instill upon them a little bit of fear, and definitely they have to know who's boss around here. And who do you think they will work for longer? They'll definitely work for someone like you twice as long and do more from themselves because they feel supported.
The people who
understand that. We need more people like you to go in and consult in companies, in leadership,
The people who work for me are not my friends. I did learn that at a very young age. My very first job out of college, I used to go out with the team that I managed, and my boss in my appraisal said to me, Carole, there comes a day where you've got to decide, are you the boss or one of the girls? And you're the boss now. And I know that, but what I am won't surprise you at all, is I am the worst influence on my team in terms of behaviour of anyone you'll ever meet. And they look at me and they go, what is it now? When I come in to have a little chat with them or tell them a little story or whatever. But initially, I tell you what, with the IT people, it was so hard when I started because they wanted to be serious all the time. And now they've after the years, they completely lightened up and they're a fantastic team. And that's leadership to me. It is. But I've had this advantage of never knowing what they're actually doing. That's an advantage.
Well, I like it. I like it because you're trusting that you made the right hire. And regularly when I consult with small businesses and they tell me how they have to stand behind their employees and re-explain how they need it to be done, I said, why are you even doing that? All you should care about is the results. Did you set clear goals? And did you give them the tools that they need? And the tools mean hardware, software, and the environment that they can actually do this uninterrupted. And reduce all the distractions, reduce the meetings, unplug their phone. They shouldn't have to sit in on conference calls that they don't really need to be on. So clear up their schedule so they can focus on creating those results for you. If they're still not doing it, you've made a wrong hire, because it's not your management that's faulty. It's their competencies were not what you thought they were. And that's unfortunate, because people who make mistakes, it means they were a bad hire. They just weren't able to perform at the level of your needs, and so let's just call it what it is. And people don't realize that. I'll just keep explaining to them. I'm like, are you getting paid? Like, is this worthy of your time? Are you helping the company grow by sitting over the shoulder of someone and walking, babysitting them? I mean, that's not what management is. It's not babysitting. So I like that you don't know IT. And I think that it is tough to work with introverts. If you're an extroverted person, like you obviously are, I am in Silicon Valley in tech world. And so I've had the same experience. I've had to manage tech projects. And, I think what's helpful to me is to make sure that they are seen and heard in a one-on-one environment. So they might not be very talkative during the meeting, so you don't know what they're thinking. You don't really know much. And so I've made a point of setting up with every one of my team members a short one-on-one, 30 minutes, where I just say, I just want to get to know you a little bit, know about your background, make sure you know about me if you want me answered questions. And that creates just a level of trust that isn't there, because they're not as forthcoming as an extrovert. They won't come to you. You have to go to them in a non-threatening way. And that's worked for me, because then they feel seen and heard and respected. And I also say, another thing with management is what you said about, about really taking care of your people, is to make sure they have what they need. I said that earlier, but think about it. If they're not, I had one guy who had a broken computer and it kept crashing. Do you know that he spent a lot of extra time not being able to get his work done? And you know that because he was introverted, he just never came forth and said anything. And I'm like, what is the company here for? We'll get you a new computer.
I must say that there are a lot of introverted people. I actually work really well with introverted people. It's probably the opposite of what you'd expect, because I enjoy the quiet, calm confidence that they exude. And it's great for me, especially in the expert way. But I also am a complete and utter walk around the office desk thing. And I'll sit on people's desks and chat to them. And initially, again, there are people who are like, we don't want you to sit there, get off my desk. But I have a little chat and ask them about their family and their house and what they're doing. But the thing that happens then is I get visits from them to tell me, and especially music. They all know I'm mad on music. And, they come and tell me and share stuff. So, but I agree what you say about the entrepreneurs, because I mentor a lot of startup entrepreneurs these days. And one of their biggest dreads of all is taking on employees, because they don't perceive it as a positive. They perceive it as a load of hassle that they haven't got the time to deal with. Mm,
Oh, I hear that all the time. It's
mm,
quicker for me to do it myself than
mm.
to explain it to someone
Yeah,
else, and then
yeah,
the headache of managing them and they won't do
yeah.
it right. And but it's the biggest step that they have to take, you know. I think that
Mm.
do it yourself is not a good way,
No,
because you have to work on your business, not in your business.
in your business. Yeah,
So,
yeah.
so tell me about how you found this idea, this crazy idea now to reinvent yourself, like this coaching. So you've been doing this for years, obviously, as an empathetic leader.
Yeah. Yes.
So you've always had that. You just didn't know that that was called coaching and it was a separate profession, right?
Yeah, no, exactly. It's been my leadership style. Although I've discovered there's a lady in Australia called Stacey Ashley who has trademarked Coach Leader as a brand, and I'm like, oh, good for you, because not only do I empathize with that and understand it, but I think that's where leadership needs to go. How did I get to where I am today? Well, of course, I was edging towards this great big birthday, and I went to visit my sister in Seattle, who's a professor of neuroscience. Works between UBC and Seattle, and I went there without really knowing what her life in Seattle was like. And in the time that I was there, I noted that she A, worked for Paul Allen, and B, one day when I was going for lunch with her, she was late because Bill Gates had dropped in on a meeting and changed something at his foundation, and she was consulting. And I'm sitting with my husband getting texts from her to this effect, and literally that's all they are. There's none of this is about ego or bragging. It's just the fact, because she actually felt terrible about letting us down for lunch. And I'm sitting thinking, Carole, what are you doing, vegetating and getting ready to go towards this potentially twilight of your career, when really you've got so much more to give? So I had a good chat and a think and a reflect. And I thought, why don't I actually train to be a coach? So I did a master's degree. Once upon a time in this interview, I said that I was shit at school and I didn't get to university and all of this. So the idea that I would choose to do a master's degree at a top UK university was probably the most ludicrous part of the whole thing. But I did it, and I did it in 10 months because I like to get things done once I start. Then I got an accreditation as a senior coach with the European Mentoring and Coaching Council. And to do that, I had to coach 25 people in 2 years on top of working full time, being a director, having 2 companies of my own. So I had a pretty crazy 2 years. And then I did all of that. And then I got a coach of my own, Jason Goldberg, who is out of Los Angeles and is the great, amazing influence on my life, coach and mentor. Did a course with him. Did a lot of, I went on an intensive with him in June this year in Portugal. And out of that came this story of the Maverick I told earlier. When he said, Carole, you're a Maverick, I was sharing a lot of my thought processes and things I've done in my life and how I do them. And it became apparent to him and his team that I think very differently to them. Now, that doesn't mean they're a representation of the world, but certainly they're pretty representative of international cosmopolitan people. And they were like, you did what? You decided what? So I then told the Maverick story, and Jason said, Carole, you're obsessed with growth mindsets and Carol Dweck's book. I almost sleep with it under my pillow. He said, you've actually got a Maverick mindset. That word Maverick, that's what you've got, and you need to own it. So since then, I've been setting myself up on my mission to own it. And here I am. And the weird thing is that I always thought I was going to be coaching entrepreneurs and growing entrepreneurs, scaling and startups. And I am. But equally, I'm coaching lawyers, accountants and bankers who all want to think differently and want to build their confidence to connect with their intuition and their emotional intelligence. Because I think this podcast has helped Krista, because I think that is the essence of the Maverick mindset. It's a mix of those two and self-confidence and punk attitude. You've got to have the punk attitude. You've got to have the, I'm going to frickin' do this no matter what. And if anyone tries to stop me, I'm going to try twice as hard.
Wow. You defy all stereotypes, Carole. I mean, I can't believe, like, I know people who are half your age who are terrified to do anything. Oh, I can't skydive, I might die. I can't climb the mountain, I'm afraid of heights. I can't apply for that job because I don't want to make a fool out of myself. And here you are showing them that you're like, screw everything, live on the edge, keep reinventing yourself, keep pushing yourself, be a maverick. And that is so inspiring for people to hear, because
hopefully
you're doing this at the age that many other people are settling down.
Yeah,
We're
getting
talking
their
about
slippers out.
about 50% of the population at your age is taking a cruise. They're out there, they're golfing, or they've got their condo and they go to Mallorca once a year for holiday, and they sit there and they don't even go in the water because they're, there might be a shark, they don't want to risk it, or they have high blood pressure, they don't want to risk swimming, something might happen, right? So you are really a role model for young as well as older folks to see that it doesn't matter what age you're at, it's your attitude that matters, right?
My the main people, my main followership online is under 35s. And I started out worrying about not worrying, I don't worry about things, but thinking, I wonder how I'm credible. But actually, of course I'm credible, because they say to me, Carole, it is so good of you to make your time for us. But I have this phrase I've developed called intergenerational skills bartering. And I do a lot of work with under 30s to help them get their business going and whatever. And in return, they teach me about the millennial mindset. They teach me about social media, which I've desperately needed over the last year. And they teach me things like how to put captions on my videos, which has been pathetic for the last 3 weeks till I finally managed it. So I think the other thing about we all have to do is just be brave enough to fall on our face now and again. I mean, I don't know whether I'm like some batty old auntie or the dowager from Downton Abbey to them or something, but I just ask them the most ridiculous questions. But you know what? They give me the most brilliant and sensible answers, because they just want me to succeed as much as I want to, and I want it for them. So I'm having quite a blast, actually. I think I'm glad it's coming across like this way, because tomorrow is one of my days I don't do my day job anymore. And I have 4 appointments with young people that will just be fantastic. And I'll be tripping on air tomorrow because I'm just spending time with young people and we're sharing what we both know.
I like that point, what you made about the intergenerational sharing of knowledge, because there's this misconception that older people are all wiser and younger people are all dumber or clueless. And it's actually not at all true. I've had some amazing conversations with my son, who's 17, my daughter, who's 14. Like the insight and the depth of their thought process blows my mind. And I also was very fortunate when I first became active on LinkedIn to meet a podcaster who inspired me to start a podcast, who's 21 years old, and he's been podcasting since 19. And I was also interviewed by a 13-year-old podcaster a month ago. So just throw it at me, and I'm pretty sure I can defy it. I'll just point to Carole. So if anyone, so you're really an inspiration for younger generation. So I can really understand why they would be attracted to your message and your thought leadership. And I think it's a shame that in society, not only we have these stereotypes, but we also don't mingle enough. So there's not in social circles, it seems that everyone hangs out with their own age group. And I think this is absolutely ridiculous. I say, I want to be like the 90-year-old woman who's surfing with the 20-year-old friend. And I won't be apologetic about it. I'll be like, hey, I want to go hang out with the youngest people, because it's just so refreshing to submerge yourself. And like you said, there's this amazing exchange of knowledge, and it's not and it's not stereotypical. It's not like the younger are clueless and the older are so wise. On the contrary, we're sharing. There's a very inspirational man called Chip Conley. I would love to have you look up. He's actually in my network. He's from San Francisco, and he reinvented himself. At the age of 54, he joined Airbnb, and the 2 founders were in their 20s.
Mm.
And he was like, I'm working in an environment after being a hospitality leader for 30 years. I'm working in an environment where people are coming into work in their hoodies and they're talking language that I don't understand. Everyone knows how to code. I don't know anything about tech. And it made him uncomfortable, but in a good way. And
Mm.
now he's founded a new company. So this is his third reinvention in his career, and it's called Modern Elders.
Oh, wow.
And what he's doing is it's basically a school for people in their 50s and beyond
Mm.
to learn how to actually live their best lives in
Yeah,
older years.
brilliant.
Instead of winding down, it's like,
Yeah,
let's ramp
brilliant.
up. And he has a retreat, and you actually go to Mexico to I think Baja California maybe,
Mm.
and he actually submerges these people into a
Mm.
mindset school of,
Mm.
it kind of like what you said about your last year, your getaway with your coach. So
Mm.
something similar to this,
Yeah,
but specifically targeting people over 50.
yeah,
I
yeah.
love, yeah, we need that. We need more modern elders like you, and you
Well,
naturally have that.
yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, exactly. I love that. I love that idea, and I shall definitely have a look at it. But I've been to 6 30th birthday parties in the last 3 months.
That's
So,
wonderful.
and also, I went to the opening of a bar for the under 30s because I mentored the people who ran it. And on the night of its opening, I got presented. You know, a glitter ball, those silver balls, that thing. I got presented with the glitter ball for the liveliest dancer.
Oh, you show them how it's done,
It's
Carole.
on
Oh my
my
goodness.
mantelpiece. It's on my
I
mantelpiece.
love that. I love that.
Yeah.
So it's so beneficial because this exchange, what you described, this intergenerational
Yeah.
exchange, you're giving them the hope that they see themselves in you in the future. So,
Mm.
and I think that's so important because in previous generations and in the main stereotypes, we see it as after 40, there's this term over the hill,
Yeah.
and then it's downward from there, and things fall apart, your health falls apart,
Mm.
your children are gone, so you don't, you're bored, and
Mm.
your career, you retire, and then you don't have anything to do all day but garden, right?
Mm.
So there's these typical stereotypes, and we're like, what do I have to look forward to? And then these
Mm.
people are living in the past. My best memories are the past ones.
Mm.
And I
No.
think the best memories are the ones in the future that haven't
Yet to
yet
come.
happened. And if you say I've lived every day a full life, but yet
Mm.
I know I'm still going to live something amazing, you're going to
Mm.
stay young. You're going to stay young, right?
Mm. My husband and I were talking about a quote the other day from Jonathan Swift, and it's, "May you live every day of your life." And we were just talking about it ourselves, saying we need to make that our motto. I know the quote from a long time ago, but we just feel it.
I love that. I think, my sister unfortunately had a stroke last year, and she was 27. So
Okay.
you'd never
Mm.
imagine, life is so unpredictable. And it really woke her up that she has to live to her fullest and not
Mm.
take any job that she's not fully
Mm.
happy with. Because, when you're young, sometimes you think, well, I have to get through the hard times in order to climb the corporate ladder.
Mm.
I'll just suck it up and I'll just tough it
Mm.
out. And I'm not trying to repel people from hard work, right? Hard work
Mm.
is different, but
Mm.
staying in a toxic environment, whether
Mm.
it's,
Yeah,
career or
absolutely right.
personal, it doesn't lead anywhere. There's no,
No,
oh, I'll just toughen it out until the children are
no.
old enough or until I get my finances together. Then I'll
Mm.
leave my
Mm.
abusive spouse. No, it's not going to work that way. So I
Mm.
think in life, more people need to hear from people like you, who've made it so far with such a rich, interesting life.
Mm.
So Carole, are there any books on your horizon? I mean, you have such a fascinating story here.
I have outlined a book, funnily enough. When I was with Jason, my coach, on like the third day, I'm like, do you want me to go through the outline of my book that I wrote last night? And Jason said, put it away, Carole. You need to practice lots of other things first. So my big priority is LinkedIn, which you know, because that's how we met. I did share with you that last October, my only social media presence was my Schnauzer Bertie on Facebook to connect with my nieces and nephews in North America. Mm-hmm. So I've been on a rocket-like trajectory with social media, and I'm doing everything at the moment, writing, videoing, filming, everything. But no book at the moment, but there will be, because I have stories that, I could fill a year's worth of podcasts with the stories of my life. But they're the past, and I want to create some new ones. So, I have one big ambition left in my life that I've always had, and that is to go to India and to do something really worthwhile in India. I adore India. It has been great for me in my life at really important times. And I want to take my part of my motivation for becoming a coach was to go to India and coach young people there and help them live their best lives. I need to do something with the skill set I've got. So that's out there on the horizon somewhere.
Wow, that is such an amazing mission to have. I know that on LinkedIn, of course, there's 630 million users and growing. And I also have a presence there, and there are so many people from India. And the thing about India that's interesting is they don't have access in their daily lives to as much mindset coaching and motivational as we do. Their society is much more fixed mindset than here in the West, in Europe, or in North America. So for them, they hang on to every word, every video, every piece of information. They want to absorb it because it's so different from what they're living in their day-by-day lives. So they really need us, Carole. Yeah. They need India specifically. You. And so I love your mission to help them even more get access to that and, disrupt their country for the good, because they're so intelligent. India's stock full of intelligence, education wise, but emotional intelligence is what the mission would be to fill their, and then they will lead in both an intellectual capacity, but also an emotional intelligent capacity, right? That's what we want.
Totally.
Right. Love it. So how do people get a hold of you, Carole, now that you have awoke and you're fired up on social? So LinkedIn, do you have a website yet, or are you just on social?
My social is on LinkedIn. I'm Carole Glover, the Maverick Maker. I have a website, caroleglovercoaching.com, but that's in its absolute infancy. So I'd have to say LinkedIn. And then on Facebook, I have a business page for Carole Glover Coaching. And then I occasionally go on Instagram, where I actually have a lot of followers because I know so many young people. And I have this funny, it's nice on Instagram because the advantage of where I live is all the young people I work with know me, trust the key word again, trust me, understand me, think I'm just Carole again. But I'm picking up a lot on Instagram, which amuses me because I'm obviously exuding whatever the hell the Caroleness is on Instagram as well. But I'm not doing a big job on Instagram yet because I want to get my confidence as high as I possibly can. Not my confidence and expertise high on LinkedIn. That's important, but I'm doing it all for impact. I have another little mini goal that in the next 5 years, I want to directly, positively impact 10,000 people, leaders. So that's just directly. So I have to meet them to do that. So that's the next 5 years. That's my little mini goal.
Wow, Carole, you're busy. And I'm so happy that you did come out of your shell and behind your pet and you actually created a real profile, because that's how we met.
It is.
And that really shows how important it is to, if you have a mission, to be there online, because there's a whole world now. It's not just about you're affecting a small community. People will be drawn to you like a magnet from all sides of the earth if
Yeah.
you're out there spreading the right message that we desperately need to hear. So thank you so much for being on my show and for being who you are. Just Carole, I love it. And the Maverick is great. And I'm going to put all your social handles in the show notes so that people start following you, because
Thanks.
I'm loving your content. I'm loving the articles you've written, and I'm so happy that you decided to come online.
Thanks. Well, I love yours as well, because I love to watch people like you, Krista, because you're ahead of me on the journey, and I know what I need to do then. And I'm really enjoying it. And I have started building my network in India. That was good advice you gave, but the more the merrier. So
Lovely.